Hi, so I've just finished working with Lilith very intensively for the last 3 days, and now that I've completed this work and I'm going to take a few days break, I thought it might be beneficial to just share some of the experiences and approaches that I have working with Lilith. So straight away, one of the big misconceptions about Lilith is that she's this evil harlot woman, if you want to use those words, and that particularly for men working with her, you should be fearful. That's not my experience at all. She feels very maternal in a lot of ways, very strict in some ways as well. She absolutely demands respect, and certain things have to be done in a certain way. That's just my experience. So how I always approach Lilith is I will start the preparation a few hours before. I always have a bath, try to make myself look as presentable as possible, have a shave, as though I'm going to meet someone very important. I sort of prepare that way. Then I always set my altar up in a very similar fashion. In terms of colours, this is the main candle that I'm using with Lilith at the moment. So it's a purple candle. I'm not sure if you can see, but I've actually drawn the sigil in red on the front. Let me just move that out of the way. In terms of colours, I've experimented with a lot of colours, and particularly purple works very well for me. And depending on what the intention of the ritual is, I might add red, sometimes silver, sometimes white, or sometimes even orange. Some people say yellow works very well, but I've had the complete opposite experience of that, and particularly with gold as well. But silver does work very well. I always have at least one crystal dedicated to Lilith on the altar. This is a moonstone. That works very well. And another thing to mention is, and I will do a video, a sort of tutorial of how to do this at some point, I always do the lesser banishing ritual before working with Lilith, and then I will do the divine elemental circle as well. So from where I'm sat, that would be Lucifer for air, I use Asmodeus for fire, Leviathan or Leviathan for water, and Belial is that direction for me, and that's for earth. And then I will then use Lilith's N to bring her forward as I start to perform the ritual. So some of the other things as well that are on my altar, these are all bits and pieces that I use pretty much exclusively with Lilith. So I always have roses, there we go, but I also have dried roses that I make. Red sandalwood chips are a very good thing to use, and an offering for Lilith. Dragon's blood, incense, dragon's blood powder is also incense, but I use that for a different purpose. Lavender, and the main incense that I use with this for Lilith is jasmine. And basically how I approach her, I draw out her sigil. Now this is the sort of grand sigil. You don't have to go that fancy, you can just use the middle part is one of her sigils, or about here, that is the Ducant sigil. But you can go as basic or as fancy as you want to, and it's really about the intent. And how I approach Lilith is very specific and different to a lot of spirits or entities that I work with. I always approach from a position of not weakness, because she absolutely doesn't like that, but kind of equality. We are both on the same sort of level, and I approach her from a perspective of, I would like to work with you for this outcome. Just trying to be polite as possible. And she's got a very, very specific energy that is quite hard to describe. Sometimes it's a very clear no, and then that brings me the question of, well, why is it a no? And it's pretty much without exception, it's because I haven't done the work to get to the point that I'm trying to get to yet. So it's almost like a kick up the backside with her when it's a no. In terms of visualization, it's very hard to describe because it's kind of conceptual. Very, very strong feminine energy, kind of overpowering at times. And this is obviously just from my perspective, and it could be different male-female perspectives. Obviously, I don't know that, but kind of at arm's length a lot of the time. Like, I can sense that she's there. I can sense that she's assisting me and bringing me knowledge that I need. But almost like I mentioned earlier, sort of very motherly kind of energy, just sort of overlooking. One thing to mention in terms of the offerings, so it's very common for people to offer red wine, pomegranates, roses, particularly red roses, and one of the biggest offerings to Lilith, and I will do a specific video on this subject because it's quite a divisive subject, is blood. Now, one thing, whether it's demonolatry or any other practice in this field, is that we do not cut each other. We have altar knives, of course, or daggers, and this is mine. And we have swords, or we have, other sharp implements that we use, but we do not ever use them to cut ourselves, other people. We don't harm ourselves. The way that I do it, if it's appropriate, and I always ask, is a diabetic lancet and one small drop of blood is more than enough. And when I do make a video about this subject, I'll explain why sometimes this is appropriate for a ritual and why it often isn't. But I just want to make that clear because of some incidents that have happened in the last few years. We do not harm anybody, anything. That's completely the opposite of what demonolatry is about. But that is one of the biggest offerings that can be given, and it's more of that sort of personal sacrifice. That's how I see it. Anyway, I digress. Another important aspect with Lilith, and you can see I've got my grimoire here that I've had for about 18 months, I think now, and I can't really share the specifics of what is in here, but if you are practicing magic, if you are on this path, this journey, it's very important to have a specific book, make notes, write things down, write experiences down, what has gone wrong, what hasn't worked for you, what has worked. But I mention this with Lilith because I've had blockages where I haven't been making progress with Lilith, and as soon as I started to write down my almost daily experiences at the time, that's when things started to move. And I almost see that as putting pen to paper as sort of solidifying or making that actual commitment rather than just thinking in my mind. And the last thing to mention about Lilith, and again, I know I keep saying this, but I will make a specific video on this topic, and this will potentially annoy, or people will have a very different opinion, but Lilith has absolutely no connection to Lucifer. There's no connection, and I don't really understand where that myth or that information came from. But Lucifer obviously is fantastic to work with and has so many positive things that I could talk for hours about him. But they're not connected energetically. They're just not. Lilith is the feminine divine, the dark feminine divine, and the counterpoint of that, from my experience, is Samael. Samael and Lilith are very strongly connected, and if you work with both of them, hopefully you'll experience that they are very, very close and very, very strongly connected. Just thought I'd mention that because that topic comes up quite a lot with Lucifer and Lilith, and there is no connection from my experience. Anyway, I hope this helps, and if you are thinking of working with Lilith, I hope that some of the things I've shared kind of point you in that direction and help you on that path. And if you've got any questions, or if you have different experiences, or you even disagree with me, just leave a comment.